Kings fans continue to react to the team's offseason moves and struggle with the Corey Perry signing. That and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night. We are doing some off-season shows over at Locked On NHL Game Night and previewing all 32 teams in the NHL over the offseason. We just did the Washington Capitals. We got the Carolina Hurricanes coming up next week and more. So if you're interested in that, please check that out. I'm also a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is time for another Kings fan feedback show. And basically each week at this time, we turn the show over to you to bring up the topics to be discussed on the show. Sometimes I answer questions. Sometimes I comment on your opinions. And we do have a lot of emails to get to, so I want to do that very quickly. However, real quick, I did want to say, and I didn't know this until the nice people at the Locked On Network posted it on social media, that today, July 11th, is the 3-year anniversary of me taking over as host of this show. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your support over the last 3 years, whether you've been here for all 3 years or maybe you've just come on the last season or so or whatever. Thank you. I'm proud of the show that I've been doing here, and I know it's evolved and I think gotten better since I took it over for sure. It's the audience has definitely grown more and more. We were under 1,000 subscribers when I started. We're now over, I think we're over 4,000 now. And it's growing and growing. So I have you to thank for that. And I just want to say it's been a fun 3 years. Looking forward to however much longer I do this. Don't have any plans on stopping anytime soon. I've enjoyed it. And big reason why is getting to know you guys, whether it's meeting in person or knowing you through social media, through emails, things like that. So it's been fun. Hope you've enjoyed it. And hope we have many more years to come here on Locked On LA Kings. So with that, we will now get into the emails, and we will lead off with some emails we had kind of left over from last week that came in late in the week. We'll start with Tommy from Manhattan Beach, who says, it's been a meh to disappointing start to Ken Holland's tenure with the Kings. I was shocked to see Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin were the replacements for Gavrikov and Spence. I agree with Eric Stevens from the interview last week that Edmundson, Ceci, and Dumoulin are tripling down on the same type of player. I hope Edmundson is involved in a trade for a particular RFA left defenseman that isn't happy with his current situation. I'm 27 years old, so my memories of Corey Perry aren't as vivid as yours. I do think Perry and Armia are good signings for the bottom six. They will bring the physicality needed in the playoffs next year. If Ken Holland signed Forsberg to a 1-year deal, I would have been ecstatic about it because I was unimpressed with Riddick last year. If, like most goalies, the Kings sign in free agency, he outperforms his contract, I could see him being traded next year for assets. My big trade idea to save this offseason is with the Buffalo Sabres. Hopefully they will like the mix of good, decent NHLers, prospects, and picks. It is so hard to tell what direction they're going in. The trade is Alex Tuch and Boehm Byram for Trevor Moore, Alex Turcotte, Joel Edmundson, Francesco Pinelli, the rights to Hampus Lukinski, and 2 first-round picks. I really don't want to involve Greenree, LaFerriere, or Clark, and that's why I added a lot of picks. Byram signs for 4 years, $7 million-ish per season. Tuch signs a 6-year extension, 6.5-ish, and LaFerriere gets a 3-year deal around 3.5. Hopefully Ken Holland makes some moves to get us fans excited for next year. Go Kings, go. And that was Tommy in Manhattan Beach, who loves to put together the trade options for the Kings. And I will have to say, wow, on that trade proposal. So let me try and recap here. So the Kings would be giving up 3 players off their roster, a pretty highly regarded prospect, a lower level prospect, and 2 first-round picks. So 7 assets go out from LA for 2 players off of Buffalo's active roster. I would say that's a bit too much. I do like Alex Tuck. I think he would fit in nicely in our top 6. He is a year younger than Trevor Moore, and he's been more productive over his career. Bowen Byram would be an upgrade, certainly over Joel Edmondson or whoever the Kings have as their second pairing on the left side, and then that would leave Brian Dumoulin to play, I guess, on the third pairing, which I think he would be very good in that role. So I get what you're saying from a Kings standpoint. I do agree with you on Buffalo. Are they, what are they trying to do? I assume they're building for the future. So, what you're giving up to them, Trevor Moore could certainly help fill the gaps now. I think Hamblin-Sakinski is a very solid prospect. And then you're talking about a couple of first-round picks as well. I guess Edmondson would have to be a part of the deal just to make it work from a Kings standpoint. I'm not saying Buffalo would necessarily want him, but that would be part of the price to make it work. How about we keep Turcotte and make one of the draft picks like a second-round pick? I think that would be it's just a lot to give up for 2 guys, even though they're pretty good players. It is a lot. That's a lot to give up. So maybe there's something there we could take back. Like I said, maybe Turcotte, maybe one of the first round picks, but it's an interesting idea. It would be surprising if it happened. Again, there's a lot of pieces there that are going to be going out, but that would be an interesting move. I don't think the Kings are going to do anything else. I think our team is set, but interesting trade idea. Ed in Brea says that he went to development camp. He said he scouted the goalies. Looks like Carter George is the goalie of the future for the Kings. As for the free agent moves, I will say Ken Holland committed treason by getting Corey Perry. This is like eating vegetables. Awful taste, however, good for you. Wow, I give Ken Holland credit. He went for need, not wants. He made our defense a bit better with defense and grit. Dumoulin is a solid D-man, having a +1 or so on a rebuilding Quacks team last season, while CC, despite the money, is solid. I will miss Gavrikov since he was our best defensive defenseman, and I'm sure the Kings fans will give him a call while he's on Broadway. The celebration, right? The way he signed, I think he did not click with Ken Holland. Maybe he liked Rob Blake. Spence, I will miss since he is a fellow Asian like me. He and Hiller sadly did not see eye to eye. David Reddick, big save Dave. He had bright spots. However, Anton Forsberg is an upgrade. He is a more consistent goalie. Go Kings, go. And that was Ed in Brea with no guarantees this week. So Ed brings up something that our guest from this past week, Keith Freeze, also brought up about Gavrikov not signing in LA, maybe as part of something with Ken Holland or not Rob Blake being around. I don't know. I really don't see that. I don't know that that didn't. The only way I could see that playing a factor is if Ken Holland came in and lowballed Gavrikov and Blake had an offer on the table and it was pulled and Holland made a lesser offer. But by all accounts, that didn't happen. At least Ken Holland has said that he upped the offer twice from what Rob Blake had initially offered Gavrikov, and that still wasn't enough to get him to stay with the Kings. So it doesn't seem like that was a scenario. I don't think players really care who the GM is unless there's somehow some personal grudge, which doesn't make any sense in this case because the negotiations are typically with the GM and the agent. The players aren't really that involved. I mean, ultimately they'll be brought in and saying, here's the offer. Do you want it or not? But the negotiation side of it, it's not, the players aren't really involved in that. So I would be surprised if the fact that it was Ken Holland and not Rob Blake changed anything. Like people have the suggestion was that Gavrikov liked Blake and he didn't like Holland. Well, first of all, he didn't even know Holland. He's only been there a few weeks. Like I said, the only way I could see that being a factor is if Holland gave him a lesser deal than Blake. And like I said, everything I've heard is that's not the case. So I don't really think that played a factor in this. I don't think. John, formerly in Tokyo, now in Greensboro, North Carolina, says, since the acquisition of Corey Perry, I have been sad and confused as to how to root for the team I have loved since high school. I'm sure I speak for many Kings fans when I say I root for the team. It doesn't ask for our opinions, and we're not on the payroll, so the front office is focused on building a winning roster. I'll just focus on the game's outcomes. If Corey Perry contributes to good results with goals, I will simply say, yay, Kings. I cannot and will not utter his name, but I will support his production. That's the only way I can come to grips with this out-of-touch decision to put him in Kings colors. That is from John in Greensboro, North Carolina. I think I'll probably have a similar attitude to that, in that obviously I hope he plays well for the sake of the team being better off. But as far as specifically rooting for Corey Perry, I just don't know that I can see that happening. We shall see. Scott in Simi Valley says, as one who comes from an asset management background, I'm shocked and depressed over the panicked, lazy moves by Ken Holland. And I'm even more sick about the move he did not make, getting rid of Jim Hiller. Yes, Cody Cece might work out, but not for the price. The money Holland blew on Cece, a mediocre defenseman, means the Kings can't afford to sign an impact player. I can talk myself into being okay with his other signings, and despite it feeling odd or worse than odd to see Corey Perry in a Kings jersey, I do think Perry will help if the Kings even make the playoffs. Why was Holland in such a rush? In the meantime, we still have Kyle Burrows. As for Jordan Spence, I'd rather have Spence and his contract than Cece. Holland pissed Spence away for next to nothing. And for any passionate professional, asset management is really not that difficult. Ken Holland is just mailing it in at this point. Holland has become the laughingstock of the NHL on YouTube, and rightfully so. In fact, the Kings have become laughingstocks also, first with the spineless collapse to the Oilers, and now Ken Holland's nauseating F-ups. Holland, Luke, and Hiller have turned this team into a freak show, and if things get any worse, we'll have to rename it the LA Jokers. It's time for an ownership change. Luke Robitaille is in way over his head, and Ken Holland has seemingly lost his head. Let's get a passionate ownership group in here who are single-minded for the love of hockey. Do some house cleaning and get to work. Scott in Simi Valley. Well, I will say for those YouTube videos, I've seen them as well. They're in my feed, because of the things that I search for on YouTube. And I mean, I get the whole clickbait aspect of it. I mean, I get it because I'm kind of in that realm as well, but I see those videos and I click on them and I'm like, who are these people? Like, they never say who they are. There's no name. They never show themselves on the camera. It's just a talking voice with like pictures. So I don't know. I'm not trying to hate on anybody else's, what they do, but I have a hard time investing any of my time or caring what opinions are of these people. I don't even know who they are. So that's me. Those videos, I don't know. I just ignore them because who are these people anyway? So for Ken Holland, I will defend him a little bit in that I think he wanted to sign Mitch Marner. I think he was going to make his pitch, and Marner signed with Vegas before he could even do that. So it's kind of hard to say Ken Holland didn't get the job done there. It was just a guy picking another team, and it wasn't anything he did wrong. He also tried for Rasmus Anderson to replace Gavrikov, and apparently Anderson said no for whatever reason, whether it was an LA thing or whether he just wants to go to free agency after this year. So he tried for a couple of big signings and it didn't work out. So then he had to go to plan B, which is to try and, fix some of the cracks that the Kings had and hope that making some smaller moves would lead to bigger and better results. I've said I'm not crazy about some of the contracts, especially the CC deal, but I see what Ken Holland is doing. I don't think it was panicked, or I don't think he's lost his mind or anything. As for the new ownership thing, I've said this before, be careful what you wish for, because if you want a passionate ownership group that's like all about hockey or whatever, it sounds great. But every time I hear somebody say that, I think of Jerry Jones in the NFL, who's the owner and runs the Dallas Cowboys. And while he's done some amazing things from a business standpoint, and that franchise is as valuable as any North American sports franchise, he's done an awful job running that team from a football standpoint. So yeah, he's a passionate owner, but he's also been terrible running that team. So is that the kind of guy you want? I mean, it sounds good in theory. They're passionate about wanting to win, but can they actually get the job done? Well, the answer for him is no. So I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for. All right, we've got more feedback coming up. We'll do that next year on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Have you ever decided at the last minute you want to head out to a ball game with some friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime can help you out. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even bigger group of players or fans to come with you to the ballpark. Gametime makes it possible. You can buy tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals. You get clear seat views and the lowest price guaranteed, and it takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming game for the Dodgers or the Angels. Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We continue with the emails. This comes from Adam in Ottawa, and he says, in one of your fan feedback shows last week, someone asked if the Jordan Spence trade was a Unetti trade or a Holland trade. You answered Holland, but we all know it was a Hiller trade. Hiller told Holland he was not going to play Spence, so he was traded. I'd say we could also blame partially Hiller for our lack of UFA attractiveness this year. The whole league watched him mess up in the playoffs with zero consequence. They also watched him bench a quarter of the team and wear out veterans like Kopitar and Doughty in the Oilers series. Would you want to play for him? I held out hope that we were keeping Hiller to attract Marner. Guess not. The Kings have always struggled to attract free agents, but it's hard to believe that this year you couldn't look at our coach and think it has something to do with that. Marner went to Vegas. Imagine that their coach had made the mistakes Hiller did in the playoffs. Would the coach still be around? Zero chance whatsoever. Vegas is an organization of winners. The Kings are not serious about winning. That's it. That was Adam in Ottawa. Well, I'll be honest with you, Adam. I really don't think the players look at the coach that much when they're deciding where they're going to go, because coaches come and go quickly in the NHL. And I think what the players look at, number one, is how much money they're going to get paid. Number two, they look at, the area they're going to live in. How does that fit with what their family is looking for? How much success a team has had. And then maybe they look at the coach. So I really think that's not that big of a deal. I will agree with what you said about it being a Hiller trade. I think that's well said, because Holland made the trade for Jordan Spence because apparently Jim Hiller didn't feel like he wanted to play Jordan Spence, didn't trust him. So yeah, I will agree with you on that one, that was a Holland trade, but it was because of Jim Hiller. Dario in Arizona says, love your podcast on Perry. I used to hate Perry so much that I wished I could stuff his stick down his throat. There were a lot of players that I've hated over the years who later became Kings, such as Bert Wilson, Dave Schultz, Tiger Williams, Jay Miller, Kelly Bookberger, Marty McSorley, and Tony Granato. Marty and Tony are two of the nicest guys I've ever met. I have both of their jerseys still. I hate to say it, but when I see Perry in the Kings jersey, I'm going to have a smile on my face. I love that one fan's comment about, after all, we are Kings fans no matter what. I keep forgetting what my late father used to say to me: always be happy with what your team gives you. Eddie, have you ever done a podcast with naming your top 5 all-time favorite Kings players? It's weird. The great one is not in my top 5. Take care. Much respect. Dario in Arizona. I don't think I've done a Kings top 5. I don't know. I might have done that cliched Mount Rushmore thing at some point. I saw that the Locked On NFL teams are all doing that apparently. Who is on your Team X Mount Rushmore, your top 4 all-time players? I haven't given it a ton of thought, but I would say, just kind of off the top of my head, I don't know that Wayne Gretzky would be in my top 5 either. Kopitar and Brown are right there, probably 1, 2. Yeah, I don't know. I think he'd certainly be in my top 10. I don't know if he'd be in my top 5 or not. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do my Kings all-time top 5 someday. Michael A. Meng in Fullerton says, Kings follower and fan since the team's NHL debut in 1967. Wow, that's awesome. He says, truly enjoy your thoughtful, considered, and well-balanced observations about all things LA Kings before and during and after the NHL season. I believe your welcoming way, encouraging fans like me to express their individual perspectives, is particularly to my liking. I do wish to offer my thoughts on why Vladislav Gavrikov chose to leave the Kings and join the Rangers. In this regard, I view his departure from the speculative standpoint of a consideration of 2 intangibles. One, Gavrikov may have truly desired or felt over time that he needed a change of scenery beyond particular considerations, which have already been expressed most eloquently by other Kings fans in the most recent emails. And two, he may have wanted to be out of the shadow of the iconic Drew Doughty and into the historic limelight of another stage like New York's Madison Square Garden, where he was wanted and needed and offered, beyond celebrated recompense, a number one defensive pairing with Adam Fox. Just an arguable thought or two, Eddie. Looking forward to the ups and downs and twists and turns of what I call LA Kings 2025-2026. Keep up the good work, my friend. And that was Michael in Fullerton. Thank you, Michael, for those words. Yeah, about Gavrikov, I think that could be a factor. It has been brought up before, how Gavrikov did an amazing job filling in for Drew Doughty. And then when Drew came back, Gavrikov is back on the second pairing and wasn't getting the minutes that Drew got. And I could understand a level of frustration possibly with that because he had done so well and then he kind of got put back where he was before. But I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine. I mean, Drew Doughty's a Hall of Famer. He's a Kings legend. And even though Gavrikov did play very, very well in his role, it would be hard for me to imagine if I were him being surprised that when Drew Doughty came back, he was going to basically get his role back and Gavrikov was going to go back to being on the second pair. So if he didn't see that coming or if that kind of irked him in some way, I could understand it. But I also, like I said, would find it hard to believe that he couldn't see that coming in some way. Scott in Thousand Oaks says, I love your show. Just a thought. Any chance Corey Perry wears the number -5 for the 5 cups he's lost? Keep up the great work on the show. Scott in Thousand Oaks. Scott, well done. Well done. More emails to come here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Jim in Janesville checking in says, enjoyed all the draft team episodes and was wondering what the cap would be with that roster. I'm a little bit too lazy to research it myself. It was really interesting to see how many late round picks succeed in the NHL. I'm a bit more confident about the new additions to the team than you appear to be in, hoping that the likes of CC and Dumoulin might thrive under the defensive structure used by the Kings. I guess we'll see. Corey Perry, oh my, I suffered on every one of the 25 or so goals he scored against the Kings, and I have disliked him as much as you throughout your career. However, I like what he could bring to the team and will cheer for his success. Thanks for the effort of off-season hockey content. I know I can speak for listeners everywhere how much it is welcome. That is Jim in Janesville. Thank you, Jim. I'll be honest. I started to kind of do the research on that all Kings drafted team and what the cap would be like, and I was like, I just couldn't put in. I was too lazy as well. So I do think though. I mean, just kind of eyeballing the roster. I mean, Drew Doughty is the highest paid player at $11 million a year, and then you've got, let's say Adrian Kempe gets $10 million in his next contract. Brock Faber, I think, is up there a little bit, but other than that, it's a pretty reasonably priced group. So I think that I think it would be a cap compliant team. We got Ruben Guzzi Gabriel in West Covina. He says, hello, Eddie. Every day you're here. Just want to chime in on the Katy Perry, Corey Perry signing. I do not like Perry, but I do understand why the Kings signed him. Never been a fan, and I do not see myself clapping for him. He may earn a few head nods from me, and I presume some Kings fans, if and only if he does the following. Number one, positively contributes to the Kings by scoring more than he did when he played last season. Number two, get under the skin of the opponents to the point where he draws more penalties. Number three, gets into more scraps, sticking up for teammates and to fire up the crowd. And number four, helping the Kings get over the hump for a deep playoff run. Let's see what Katie can do this year for the Kings. On another note, Juice deserves a really good contract with a lot more money. I was stoked to see him with the A on his chest this past season. If he continues progressing his play, I can definitely see Juice with a C on his chest one day. Go Kings, go, go Rain, go. That is Ruben in West Covina. Yeah, I could see that. The approving head nod to Corey Perry if he does something good. You're just kind of like, I'm not going to clap, I'm not going to cheer, I'm not going to say woohoo, but I'll just kind of go, all right. The Katy Perry thing kind of reminds me of the Chris Everett thing with the Jim Rome show back in the day. You guys remember that? The Jim Everett, the quarterback, he called Chrissy Everett. Anyway, we have this from, I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Primoz in Slovenia, Primoz. Primoz, I hope. He says, of course, my favorite player is Anze Kopitar. He's the reason I've been a Kings fan for the past 20 years. I can't wait for next season when he becomes the all-time leading scorer in Kings history. Really enjoy your show and listen to it every day on my way to work. I find it strange that in the NBA, all the big names want to come to Los Angeles, but in hockey, no one does. The Kings have to draft and develop their own players instead. After doing some research, I discovered some interesting insights into how much players actually take home after taxes. It shows the AAV, average annual value figures, can be misleading as they don't reflect the player's true net income. And that is definitely a major factor in why teams from states with no income tax have been so dominant over the last 6 seasons. 5 of the last 6 Stanley Cup winners come from states with no income tax. And the 6th, Colorado, has significantly lower compared to Los Angeles. That's why teams like Vegas, Florida, Tampa Bay have had so much success in recent years. They can offer players less on paper, and the players still end up taking home the same amount they would if they signed with the Kings for much more. One example is Aaron Ekblad, who signed for just $6.1 million per year, which is essentially the same as $7.7 million with the Kings. What surprised me the most is Marner's $12 million to Vegas. To earn the same net salary in Los Angeles, he would need to sign for around $15.25 million, showing just how significant the tax difference can be. No wonder he went to Vegas. I would too. Maybe you at some point could have some content about this during the offseason. Keep up the great work. Go Kings go. And that was Primoz in Slovenia. Well, great to hear from someone from the homeland of Anze Kopitar. That's awesome. I have not done the math as you have done so well. I will say I knew it was a factor. I didn't know when you hear the numbers like that, if that's accurate, and I don't presume that it isn't. This is something because the NHL is acting like this is no big deal, and they're acting like we're not going to do anything about it. But they were doing the exact same thing when it came to long-term injured reserve and the teams that were taking advantage of that. And then suddenly they changed it. They went from, this is not an issue, it's not something we need to address, to, oh yeah, we're changing this. You can't do this anymore. So I kind of feel the same way about this state income tax issue. They're saying right now, it's not that big of a deal. We are not planning on doing anything to address it. And then next thing you know, they're going to address it. I don't know. I kind of feel like that's the way it's going to be. But, even Brad Marchand said it. It's a factor. Now, how big of a factor? Is it the factor? I don't know. Maybe it's the deciding factor. I don't think it's only about that because those teams that you're talking about are winning teams as well. Like players want to go where they can win. And if they can make more money, then of course, yes. But it is a factor. I don't think there's any question. It is a factor. Gary in Orange says, on 2 or 3 different occasions, I've heard Ken Holland mention Liam Greenree as a player who will be invited to training camp. Holland talks about Greenree as if he's part of the current roster. I think you mentioned a while back that Greenree can only play next season for the Kings or Windsor, and that's because of the technicality that he can't play in Ontario. Since he has dominated in Windsor for the last 2 years, I think he should be given a legit shot to make the team, even though he's a year or 2 ahead of schedule. He's got nothing to prove in Windsor. Do you think he makes it more likely that he makes the Kings team this fall? And that was Gary in Orange. Gary, I have noticed that as well, that Ken Holland has kind of gone out of his way to include Liam Greenree when he's kind of talked about the Kings. That has caught my attention, but I just don't see a place for him on the roster. I don't know where he would fit in. There's just no place for him. The 4th line is now set on the wings, and I just unfortunately don't think he has anywhere to go. I think he's going back to junior. It is unfortunate that the NHL just changed a rule that would make it will make in the future players that are in Greenree's situation that are 19 years old, it will allow them to go to the AHL, but that's not until next season. It doesn't apply this year, unfortunately. So Liam Greenree is going to be the last class, if you will, of that where that rule applies. If this were the same situation next year, he could go to Ontario, where he needs to go. But unfortunately, it's just not the case this year. I just don't see where he fits in. He would have to come in training camp and just absolutely blow everybody out of the water for him to find a place on the roster. And I'm not sure where that would be. Bill in La Habra says, I heard an internet rumor today about Marty Necas being unhappy in Colorado. It would be fantastic to get him on the offense. Have you heard about this? If true, what are your thoughts on the likelihood? More importantly, at this point, however, is the question of who will replace Nick Nixon in the booth. I hope we get someone half as good as Nick or Bob Miller. Have you auditioned? Any insider info on the selection? We've been so blessed with our Kings announcers. Every time I travel and listen to other hockey broadcasters, I'm reminded how great Nick is and was at play-by-play, and how amazing of a hockey professor Jim Fox is. The booth will be different for sure, just like it will be very different to cheer for Corey Perry. Not sure I can. Thanks as always for the great shows. I hope your family continues to succeed in their battle with medical issues. All the best. LED, loyal everydayer, Bill in La Habra. Well, Bill, I appreciate your thoughts. I have not heard anything about who's going to follow Nick Nixon as the voice of the Kings. The only name I could even speculate on is Josh Schaefer, who was formerly the voice of the Ontario Reign. He's been working with the Kings, doing some radio play-by-play. He's done some kind of behind-the-scenes stuff, some support stuff, media-wise. It would be an amazing opportunity for Josh if that ends up happening. It is certainly possible the Kings could maybe look for a more established voice, but I honestly have not heard anything in that regard. As for Marty Necas, yes, I have heard that he might not be all that interested in signing long-term in Colorado. He's going to be UFA after this coming season. I think if the Avalanche can't sign him this summer, I would not be surprised if they were looking to trade him. Would the Kings be a possible destination? Possible, but he will be in high demand for sure. Let's squeeze the final one in here. Brian in Los Alamitos, he says, in the event that a Kings defenseman sustains an injury during the season, I'm afraid Ken Holland will try and trade for Darnell Nurse. I believe it was Holland who signed Nurse to that $9.5 million contract at Edmonton. He so obviously thinks very highly of him, but is it even possible? Can the Kings afford such a contract? Do they have enough assets to trade? Would Nurse be willing to waive his no-trade clause? Please allay my fears. I also enjoyed your discussion with Keith Freeze on the Kings jersey concept. I don't know why it's so difficult for the Kings to put the old crown on the front of the jersey. Nothing symbolizes a king more than the crown. Not a Chevy logo, not a home plate logo. It's just as a simple and obvious jersey idea. I can't believe the team cannot think of this themselves. If they did this, the Kings would sell so many jerseys, probably across the U.S. and Canada. Fun fact, Ken Lowe, a freelance designer who created the current New England Patriots logo, also designed the infamous Burger King head logo. It was his first job out of design school. Thanks for another great week of shows. Brian in Los Alamitos. I did not know that little piece of Kings jersey trivia on the guy who designed the Burger King. Do not own the Burger King logo. Don't plan on it. I know it's unique. Never liked it. And so, no, not for me. As for Darnell Nurse, as you mentioned, he's got a full no movement clause. He's signed for 5 more years, as you mentioned, $9.25 million, which is way too much for a second pairing guy. I think the Oilers would love to trade him. I don't know there's any way that the Kings could get him. If there was an injury to Drew Doughty and they put him on long-term injured reserve for the rest of the season, then they would be able to get his cap hit in. But that's only if it was Drew Doughty. I don't know. Maybe Ken Holland does like him, and he certainly did sign him to that big contract. That is correct. But I hope that doesn't happen. I hope there's no scenario where that happens, because I think that contract hurts the Oilers. And why would we want to make things easier for them? We certainly don't. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. As I always say, this show is literally not possible without your participation. If you want to email for a future fan feedback show or for any other reason, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We would love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Locked On LA Kings, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Locked On LA Kings. If you are interested in some extra Kings content and in supporting me, send me an email, lakingsextra@gmail.com, lakingsextra@gmail.com, and I will send you the information on that. Thank you. And I appreciate all your support on the 3-year anniversary of me being your host of Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.